Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Lifting the Veil podcast with myself, your host, Adrienne Lopez, the Integrative Healing Coach. And this week, I wanted to come on and speak to you about unconscious agreements and contracts in regards to shadow work, emotional freedom, personal freedom, making empowered choices in your life from a centered, connected place, and how all of this is connected to the quality of your life. And so I want to start off by just saying that as individuals, we come into this world with an incredible, I don't know, I guess you could say pre-downloaded intelligence, right? So like when you get a new phone, not that people are phones, but just as a metaphor, it comes already with all of the groundwork before any of the apps or the programs are added. It has a structure and a format and a blueprint, and we have an organic blueprint. And as I, as I often like to say, we are a product of nature, a force of nature. We have an organic blueprint with subtle levels of life energy that are surging through us. For example, we have this incredible mind, which for many of us tends to be the dominant operating focus for us in our culture. But we also have our physical body and our emotions and our energetic or our vitality, and we have our intuition. And as a lifelong student of yoga, it has not missed me that the yogis referred to this, or what they refer to as the koshas, are very similar. The 5 koshas or sheaths of awareness. And they all exist in their own particular domain with their own rules. If you want to think of like game theory or something, like our physical body has certain rules that are restricted to the physical world. And then our emotions have another set of rules. And so we are dealing with a highly multi-dimensional, intricate system, organic life system, biofeedback system that we never got the handbook for. Let's just be honest. And so I've spent at least the last 30 years doing research on the ground in my own body, frustrated because I have, and maybe you might be able to relate, you can let me know in the comments, been a mystery unto myself, almost, almost to the level of like this unconscious fear of discovering the truth of who I am and looking at where that might come from. Why that there's this unspoken hesitancy to look at what's really there in this organic system. So I've been patient with myself and I've been taking my time, and I have come at it from different venues, different traditions, different lenses. And so I am here sharing with you my own research, actually, that I've gathered along my way. And what's funny and kind of interesting is that in our world, we have given authoritative positions to people in academia who measure the outside world. But actual knowledge, the living knowledge, is embodied and it can't be found in a book. That's what I so appreciate about yoga and meditation. It is a living classroom. We are a living laboratory, and in that way we are all scientists. We are all doing research on what it means to be human. So just like every week when I come on to share with you different topics, and when I interview people who are sharing their experience, all of this is grounded in personal unfoldment. And so nobody's asking you to believe it or demanding that you believe it. It's just one piece or mode of information that might be able to help you on your path and your journey of personal, emotional, or spiritual growth, if that's what you're interested in. I figure if you're here listening to this podcast today, then you definitely are interested in that. So when we talk about these different domains of our humanness, in yoga, they're presented as like envelopes or sheaths, and each one fits in the other, from the most gross or the physical sense to the most subtle aspects of our being. And in our culture, we are largely programmed unconsciously to be cut off or removed from these incredible nuances or the subtleties that make up our experience, whether we know it or not. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. And this is connected to learning to listen to our own experience. And this is not necessarily a mental exercise. It is using our most innermost center of our being, energetically related to the heart and its wisdom. So we can re-enliven all the layers or aspects of our being, which create the full spectrum of our humanity, not just our mind, although a beautiful gift. But it also cuts us off from different aspects of our being if we're just living in the mind. So it's like we can only make fully informed or empowered choices when we become fully informed or knowing of the truth of our embodiment, let's say. And this comes from developing our ability to discern what is, what is coming from inside of us and what is coming from outside of us. And like that one movie, I can't remember the horror movie. It was like the phone's ringing, and they're like, it's coming from inside the house, and it's so scary because it turns out that the place that was supposed to protect them from outside predators or dangers is actually inside the house. And that is just one example of how people began to not trust themselves, not to trust the information that they're receiving because they don't know where it's coming from. And that's scary. So we learn to shut it down, especially if you haven't been trained or known that you could even build that muscle. If you're a super sensitive empath like I am, one that takes on information of others, at least that's what I learned to do in order to survive in my home. But then it got real confusing because I didn't know my sense of self was so fluid. I couldn't tell what was me and what was coming from outside, until and I'm by no means perfect at this time, of course, but through my intuitive training and my spiritual path that I've been traveling for many years now, I've been able to attune more accurately to my own energetic unfolding, to where I no longer take on other people's experience as my own. And so there are many practices and tools you can use to develop that muscle. I don't have time today in today's topic to discuss all of those. Next week, I'm having an intuitive psychic empath as one of my guests, who's going to be talking about how we develop those skills. So I will keep you posted when I publish that next week. But until then, this topic of unconscious agreements and contracts, where does it come from? Where do we get these ideas from? And there was something that I wanted to share with you about the power of agreements and contracts when they're conscious. So a lot of us are functioning unconsciously in agreements and contracts that we've inherited from our parents, from our caretakers, from our families of origin. And when we're operating in unconscious contracts and agreements, on one level, there might be a sense of safety in regards to what to expect, but they're often marked by a contrast of being unsafe, truly being emotionally, psychically, emotionally unsafe because they're unconscious. So how does this happen? And how does it show up in our lives? And what can we do about it, really? So as these lovely, innocent babies that come onto the planet, we all long to be touched and seen and held and felt and accepted and have a sense of belonging. Yet, as we grow up, we often receive many messages to the contrary. In order to be loved and accepted, that we have to repress parts of ourselves and the way we behave in order to get what we quote unquote want. And, there's lots of reasons for that, which I won't go into now. But these messages, which turn into our unconscious contracts and agreements, come from our family, our culture, our religion, our media, and also our personal and our collective traumas. This all results in what many people call shadow, because it's what's repressed under our awareness. And it causes important parts of our life energy to get pushed underground. So as a force of nature, we have to create subterranean tunnels underneath to hide and protect, which those parts of us that weren't safe enough to show to the people around us because they were threatening to them and their ego stories and their sense of reality and well-being. So there's parts of ourselves that are intrinsic to who we are, but we've had to disown them, we've had to reject them. And on some core level, that's affecting our fundamental sense of well-being and our health and our vitality, because part of our life energy is being divided within the self, within the home, within the inhabitants, within the dwelling, within the construct that we call self. And they end up residing, they're still there. It's not like these parts of us go away, but they just get relegated to the shadow, or those parts that our ego cannot acknowledge even exist. And so, for any of you that have heard about shadow work or have done shadow work, you know that this refers to taking those parts of ourselves that we've repressed, our life energy and in our unconsciousness, those parts of ourselves that have been hidden and exiled and rejected, like orphans on a certain degree, and bring those back into our awareness. But we can't do that if the ego is still feeling unsafe, not feeling protected. So shadow work is the process of not only revealing our shadow to ourselves, but creating, like we can't do this unless we create a safe environment where we can reintegrate those parts of us into our conscious awareness. And so as my work as an integrative healing coach, that's really what I'm doing. I don't call it shadow work, but it really is, because I'm working with people that are internally fragmented and divided. And it's like having a team, a football team, who all has a different agenda. It's like, how are you ever supposed to get the ball to the goal if you have a bunch of parts of yourself, like parts of a team, working against each other, divided, in conflict, arguing? And so this isn't a mental process. It's not a conceptual process, but it is a deeply felt experience, learning to tune into those 5 levels that I just spoke to you about. The physical, the emotional, the energetic, our sense of vitality and aliveness, our intuition, and I think I missed one, but I mentioned at the beginning all 5. And it's interesting because we have 5 fingers, we have 5 senses. So this is really like the basic organic blueprint of our humanity in a physical body, which points to the 5 domains, or the 5 dimensions of our being. And in order to be whole and complete, in order to tune into all layers of our being as a conscious functioning whole in a collective of wholes, which creates the whole. If we have a bunch of individuals that are operating from only half of their life force energy, or are internally conflicted, and then that is mirrored out into the collective and the world, it's no wonder we have such occurrences that we see out in the world of chaos, confusion, unexplained irrationality, because this is the consciousness trying to wake itself up to its own dis-ease, its own disconnection. And so part of the way that I help support people is to do this integration work. And it's largely a somatic process. It's an embodied process. And that is the most powerful approach to personal growth, because it's not just working with the mind. The mind It's a wonderful tool, but it can't take us where we need to go to integrate the body, the nervous system, and the mind, and also our soul. And so when I work with someone as an integrative awareness coach or healing coach, I work with them to explore those exiled parts of themselves that they often project out. And no, I mean, this is not a judgment or a blaming opportunity to blame. It's looking at the blueprint that we've had to structure the self and look at the parts that have not been in resonance with the truth of who we are. And so my work is to explore these exhaled parts, help individuals safely feel to feel safe enough to bring those suppressed parts of their emotions and the sensations in their body where these repressed parts of ourselves live, and the core beliefs and energies that keep them in place, to bring them back into connection and freedom so you can live a more authentic life, so you can attune to the GPS called you without tuning into other people's GPSs unconsciously, thinking that that's you, because we all have our unique soul signature that we brought with us to express and enliven in this world. And if we are busy trying to operate or control other people around us, because we misidentified the boundaries of our own energetic being, then we're going to be exhausted, we're going to be overwhelmed, we're going to be frustrated, we're going to hit obstacles. So this is a multi-level process, but it is definitely worth an investment of becoming extremely intimate. And that word intimate, you may have heard, is defined as into me I see, the truth of who you are, so you no longer have to bleed your energy and power into other people and situations. And so it's a restructuring through a honest reflection of what's really happening in your organic energetic system moment to moment in the present moment, to identify these unconscious contracts and agreements that may have been running your life in a way where there's no authentic choice, no true freedom, no ability to measure if these unconscious agreements are actually in alignment with your particular soul signature. And most often they're not, because they're not in present time, they're from the past. And so another aspect of this work is bringing all of our agreements, whenever we notice them, bringing them into present time, rewriting them. And in this way, these contracts are sacred because they rule our life energy. And in this way, although nobody gave us a user's manual, I mean, they did in unconscious contracts and agreements, but there was nothing in the disclaimer that said, attention, these agreements and contracts most likely will not fulfill your life purpose. Like nobody, they didn't put that part in. And so without consciously creating our own contracts with ourselves and in relationships, it's very difficult for the personality, the ego, and even our soul to feel safe enough to come back into the fullness of our power. So this is an extremely self-empowering work to do. And I mean, honestly, I can't think of anything more important work to do, more enlivening work to do, because it allows us to release all of this misdirected at times, our life energy that gets misdirected because it's placed in inauthentic, unconscious programs that aren't actually serving us at this time. And they are encased in trauma, stuck emotional energy, psychological wounds that bind up our energy and store them without our conscious consent. And it's time now on the planet where we are being asked to, as I spoke about, I think a couple of weeks, about what it means to be truly responsible for our energy and our consciousness on this planet. It's so important right now, more than ever. It's almost like this is like, like for those of you that ever played Monopoly, like do not pass go, do not collect $200. It's like you will not be allowed to go through this next gate of evolution. At least that's the message I'm getting until we do this work. And it is a powerful process and work that will allow us to courageously step into the empowered version of ourselves that's going to be required for this next step in our human evolution. And I think that's terribly exciting. But really, at the end of the day, as a collective, we have made the choice to wake up to the full spectrum of who we are. And so if you'd like to find out more about doing this work with me, I invite you to reach out. You can reach me on any of my social media platforms, and you can also check out my website. All of this is in the description. And I'll be talking about more of this topic for weeks to come, so do not fear. I do have a Sunday night mastermind group entitled Invoke, and it is a place where I get together with like-minded folks who are interested in transforming their consciousness at the level that's required in order to create the kind of impact, the kind of lives and that they desire. And it's no longer just a personal, like, I wish I had more money, which is good, but it's also like, how is my consciousness affecting the collective? How is my consciousness creating ripples out into the world? And that when I continue to narrow my consciousness to the mental aspect of my awareness, then I'm missing out on the subtle layers of my being that are the power behind my existence. And I'm not taking consciously harnessing my life force as the force of nature that I am and that you are. So I think I'll leave it there. Next week I have Kavena Charlot visiting. She is one of my mentors and intuitive teachers, and I'll be interviewing her about how to strengthen your own intuitive gifts, your own intuitive nature as one of the layers of our awareness and our consciousness. All right, until next time, please remember what a valuable treasure you are, and I'll see you here next week, hopefully. And bye for now.